6 months had passed, and the Ironwood Canyon had settled into a grim, profitable routine, a state of hyper-efficient exploitation that was far more terrifying than the open warfare that preceded it. The dust of the Shaw-Thorne feud, the raw chaos and blood, had been swept into the corner, leaving behind a polished, terrifyingly efficient operation. The territory was officially the domain of the Thorne Syndicate, its flag deep blue and silver flying over every major mining head and logistics depot. But the true operational heart of the business, the mines, the crushing plants, the transport, logistics, and the high-level supply chain deals, was run by Caleb Shaw ***. Caleb was the ghost in his own house, an exiled king serving his conqueror. He now lived in a luxurious, isolated residence provided by the Syndicate, a modern architectural marvel of glass and reinforced concrete, perched precariously on a ridge, overlooking the very land his family had lost. It was a golden cage, meticulously designed for comfort and utter loneliness. To the Syndicate employees, he was known simply as the chief operator, a man of staggering financial power, moving tens of millions in currency and resources daily, but possessing zero political or emotional authority. He existed purely as a function of capital. His sole purpose in this high-altitude purgatory was twofold: to maximize profit for Audrey Thorne with flawless efficiency, and to use the truly exorbitant consultant's salary, a price Audrey paid begrudgingly, but necessarily to fund Lila's complex, permanent medical care. His sister was stable, recovering slowly, thriving in an anonymous facility 1,000 miles away, but her dependence remained the silent, costly chain that bound Caleb irrevocably to the woman who had helped imprison his father. Lila was his entire motivation, the living counterweight to his profound betrayal. In the old Shaw headquarters, a sprawling, imposing structure now meticulously rebranded as the Thorne Syndicate's Ironwood Command, Audrey Thorne reigned. She had shed the severe corporate armor of her father's legal firm for the rougher-edged role of a CEO managing resource extraction. She wore custom-made fire-resistant jackets and boots rather than silks, yet her transition from boardroom strategist to field commander was proving rocky. The Syndicate's old guard foremen, pit bosses, and logistics managers who had served Elias Thorne for decades resented Caleb's presence with a palpable, silent fury. They saw him as an unproven rival who had won not by strength, but by corporate betrayal. They obeyed him instantly, recognizing his operational genius, but they absolutely did not trust him. The stability that settled over Ironwood was an illusion, a highly leveraged financial structure built on the deep, cold necessities of two deeply resentful people. And as history proved, where there is weakness, a predator will always emerge, testing the tensile strength of the new regime. The first crack appeared not in the mines, with a labor strike, or in the fields, with a sabotage attempt, but in the legal quietus they had so painstakingly achieved. A powerful external mining consortium, the Argent Group ***, led by a calculating and ruthlessly patient financier named Simon Vance ***, suddenly filed an aggressive, complex lawsuit. The target, the vital Dry Creek water rights ***, which were absolutely essential for the cooling and purification process at Ironwood's largest mineral extraction plant. The lawsuit wasn't a standard land grab. It was a legal siege. Vance's strategy wasn't about winning the rights outright. It was about tying up the resource in court, effectively freezing the Syndicate's operations and destroying the flow of capital. Audrey summoned Caleb immediately from his remote residence. Her office was all glass and sharp angles, overlooking the canyon floor, a physical manifestation of her own precise, unforgiving personality. The air in the room was electric with alarm. "Vance is good," Audrey admitted, pacing the length of her polished concrete floor, tapping a diamond-tipped stylus against a thick stack of court documents. "He waited exactly 6 months until our new corporate structure was registered, complacent, and exposed. And now he's attacking our most vulnerable resource, the supply chain purity. He's betting that the new Thorne structure is top-heavy, slow, and dependent purely on paper mandates." "He's right," Caleb said without emotion, standing still, absorbing the architectural pressure of the room. "The supply chain is slow because you're trying to run a field operation using legal mandates developed in a Manhattan office. Vance won't attack the mines physically. He'll attack the contracts. If he successfully ties up the Dry Creek pumping station in federal court, the Ironwood plant shuts down in 3 weeks, starved of processed minerals. The economic fallout will be immediate." Audrey stopped pacing and fixed him with a cold stare. "Then you stop him. That is why I pay you, to anticipate and neutralize threats on the ground. You know the canyon's shadow economy better than anyone. Find the leverage he's using to target a 50-year-old water treaty." Caleb leaned against the polished doorframe, a sardonic look twisting his features. "This isn't a Shaw move, Audrey. This is corporate warfare at its highest level. I was the financial engineer of the Shaw Empire. You were the legal architect of the Thorne Empire. You need to use your power. I run the land, but you own the law. Your father's law." Caleb began his investigation, using the vestiges of the network of informants and old contacts he had maintained under the guise of the chief operator. He spent 2 grueling days tracking old land disputes and legal filings. He discovered that Simon Vance's lawsuit was suspiciously well-informed, targeting hyper-specific, obscure flaws in the original 1970s water treaties, flaws that only a handful of people in the territory, the original signatories, had ever known existed. "It's too specific," Caleb reported back to Audrey, frustrated, his voice taut with the realization of a deeper rot. "Vance isn't guessing. He has an internal source. Someone with access to the original, highly protected Shaw documents, or perhaps your father's private legal memos." Audrey paled slightly, her professional composure fracturing. She walked to her secure console and slammed her hand against the marble surface. ****, Elias Thorne, ****. Her father was currently under house arrest at his secure estate, awaiting trial for dozens of racketeering and federal charges. His communication and visitors were supposed to be completely monitored and restricted by the courts. My father, Audrey whispered, the betrayal stinging her personally. He's making a play from the inside. He gave Vance the information, the legal weak point, to create chaos and destroy our stability. He's hoping I fail and the Syndicate stock tanks, giving him massive leverage in his own plea bargain against the federal government. The revelation forced Audrey and Caleb to pool their most sensitive intelligence resources, an act of intimate trust neither had planned on. Audrey, swallowing her pride, shared the secure satellite communications logs from Elias's home perimeter, and Caleb shared the intricate financial flow charts of Vance's capital and credit lines. Together they realized the terrifying scope of the attack. Vance wasn't an independent, profit-seeking threat. He was a Trojan horse, a financial weapon aimed at the very foundation of the Thorne Syndicate's control. He's not trying to acquire the water rights themselves, Caleb deduced, tracing the labyrinthine money flow on a projection screen detailing Vance's credit derivatives. He's trying to acquire the debt of the local farmers who rely on those rights, the small independent landowners who lease the land from the syndicate. If he bankrupts them by tying up the water, he forces a fire sale of the land back to him, piece by piece, bypassing all our federal land deeds. And if we lose the land beneath the mineral veins, we lose the mineral access, Audrey finished, tapping the screen, her gaze fierce. Elias is attacking our foundation. He is testing my control by making me fight his enemies, betting I don't have the stomach for the dirty work. With the clock ticking down their financial solvency 3 days from collapse, Audrey made an unprecedented decision. She left her sterile command center and drove with Caleb into the canyon's interior, the volatile, dusty old farming territory where the dispute over water rights was already boiling over. They drove in a reinforced black SUV, the silence between them a physical, charged presence heavier than the armored doors. "You hate this," Audrey observed, glancing at Caleb, noting the way his hands rested defensively on the center console. "Being out here, being physically beholden to me." "I hate owing you," Caleb corrected, his eyes focused on the winding road and the familiar hostile territory. "But I don't hate the work. I just hate that I am securing the life of the woman who helped put my father away and who holds the future of my sister in her hands." Audrey paused, a moment of stark vulnerability showing. "And I hate having to rely on you. I should be able to dismantle Vance with a stroke of a pen, but Elias knew my blind spot was the ground. He knew I'd need a Shaw local to fight a Shaw proxy." They arrived at the Dry Creek pumping station, a dilapidated, vital facility where water was diverted to both the massive mining operations and the struggling farming community. Local residents, anxious, heavily armed, and deeply suspicious, were already guarding the main intake valve, fearing Vance would seize it through a court order and turn off their supply. Caleb stepped out of the vehicle and approached the farmers alone. He didn't introduce himself as the chief operator. He introduced himself as Caleb Shaw, the man who used to own the land, the man who grew up on the dust they now stood on. He spoke their language not of legal jargon and stock futures, but of yield, rainfall, and property rights. He spoke for a grueling hour, bridging the gap between the terrified workers and the Faceless Syndicate, while Caleb diffused the local tension, promising immediate, guaranteed, and above-market rate payouts for their water usage that bypassed the Syndicate's slow corporate bureaucracy. Audrey stood back, watching the interaction through the tinted glass of the SUV. She realized Caleb didn't just understand the territory. He was the territory. His influence wasn't financial. It was relational, rooted in deep, shared history and trust. Using Caleb's immediate financial guarantees, the local farmers, now secure in their immediate futures, refused to sell their debts to Vance's aggressive agents. The key asset Vance was trying to acquire vanished overnight. The Trojan horse was empty. Back in her sterile office, Audrey permitted herself a moment of triumph. She smiled, a genuine, if chilly, expression. "Vance's Trojan horse is starving. We stabilized the immediate threat and protected our land." Caleb nodded, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. "But the threat hasn't retreated, Audrey. Elias is not going to stop. He's testing the new chain of command. He wants to know if we're strong enough to survive him and the mess he left behind." Audrey walked to her panoramic window, looking out over the sprawling, illuminated industrial complex, her mind already moving past defense and toward offense. "Then we show him we're stronger. Simon Vance is just the messenger. We need to send him back with a very specific, devastating reply." Audrey turned to Caleb, her eyes glinting with a renewed, dangerous ambition that mirrored his father's own fierce need for dominance. "You stabilized the land, Caleb. You stopped the bleeding. Now I need you to weaponize it. I need you to use your ground knowledge, your deep understanding of the local infrastructure and their economic weaknesses to launch a counter-assault on the Argent Group's weakest point. We ain't going to wait for them to attack again. We are going to bleed them dry and send the message back to Elias. The Thorne Syndicate is not a successor. It is a predator. The alliance, forged in desperation and mutual necessity, was now cemented in mutual aggression. They were no longer two houses feuding, but a single, focused, unstoppable engine of power, fueled by the ruthless ambition of one and the absolute necessity of the other. The gold handcuffs were tightening, and Caleb realized that escaping Ironwood wouldn't be as simple as signing a document. It would require dismantling the very structure he was now building.